You left a comment here, and I kind of sent you a message on Signal, like, about Debian. So Debian just released version 12, and everyone's like going crazy about it.
Yeah, that
Like,
that is what it seems like. Like if I open YouTube, if I open these forums that I follow, it's like these Linux creators are very excited about Debian. Debian 12. They're like it's the best release ever, right? Um, and it makes sense because finally, apparently, I haven't used it yet, but this is what I've heard them say. It supports like modern hardware. You can use current video graphics drivers, for example, so it's great for gaming, stuff like that. And it's like this is my frustration with Debian in general and these like stable Linux distro releases. Um, it's that they're always great, like the month that they come out with a new release, right? the issue, the issue isn't that they're always behind. It's that for the next 2 years from now, Debian 12 is going to be exactly the same as it is now, right? It's not going to be getting further updates and stuff like that. It's pretty much pinned all their software here to what is releasing now. There's going to be security patches, of course, and stuff like that, but no feature updates.
What are you complaining about, man?
And the problem with that on desktop Linux specifically is that desktop, like the desktop ecosystem is a moving target. If you're a desktop operating system, you can't afford to not change anything at all for 2 years in a row or 4 years in a row because I don't know how long Debian is like officially supported, but I think the last version is supported as well. So you could potentially be going 4 years between releases. And it becomes unworkable. And it happens every 2 years. It happens every time Debian is released, you know? People are very excited because they get the latest software, and then they don't get any new updates for a very long time, compared to rolling releases, which get like updates immediately as the developer pushes them out. I think that Debian has like, it has a space. I run servers on it, for example, some of them, and like there's a reason that you might want to pin all of your software to a specific version for a long period of time, but you almost never want to do that on the desktop.
Oh, you know what? You could bitch about anything, couldn't you?
Because the desktop ecosystem is always changing. Apps that you want to use, web browsers, they're always changing. And like even consumer hardware is always changing. It's always being updated. And when you're stuck with 2-year-old software, it's simply not going to work anymore. So
Is this guy a retard?
it's just the frustration I always have with new releases of Debian. And we're seeing it again. It's weird stuff to me.
it's valid. And on Linux, who would have guessed no ARM64 support, which is just whack in 2023. Big fail. The other thing too is I'm going to say something on my end that might be unpopular. If you're on Linux, you're signing yourself up for a more difficult time with really anything you're going to do. And I know the Linux community wants to fight back on that like all day, every day, but I think a lot of things are just more difficult on Linux. You're going to have less client, you're going to have less software compatibility with things. Not everything's like that, but a lot of things are. And this is one of those areas. I would really recommend something like a NAS. And that's why I think Linux is kind of like a slippery slope, because now you're on Linux and now it's like, well, I might as well just use Nextcloud or like a NAS or something else that I also own and control. And before you know it, it's like a full-time job to have stuff like this. It's not always like that, but just saying. So I used to use Debian. That used to be my main Linux distro on my personal laptop. And what actually prompted me to move away, I was already somewhat unhappy with it because I realized there was a lot of things that just stopped working after, like you said, like a couple years of using Debian. I was like, okay, like I'm starting to stumble on issues now. But the main thing that happened was I wanted to try to build Firefox from source. So this is when I'd never ended up like actually doing this. And then caption 8169 asked about security for like banks and brokerage accounts, and we will probably get back to that in just one short. So we'll probably have 3 shorts this upcoming week before we come back next week for the next surveillance report 131. But with Debian, I literally couldn't actually, it started getting to a point where I'm like, screw this is ridiculous. And that's the design usage for Debian. Like, it's supposed to be locked in place. So this isn't necessarily a criticism of, like, it's not a criticism of anything that's not supposed to be its design use case, is what I'm saying.
I don't know if this is a hot take or not. So I think that like a lot of maybe old school Linux desktop users are very out of touch with what people use their machines for. And it might be just a matter of needs. Like if you only visit one website, maybe you only browse the old Reddit design in Firefox, and you do nothing else with your computer. Do you really need Firefox to be updated? Maybe not. Maybe that's fine. You can post to Reddit and Hacker News and whatever like text-based forums you want in this browser. But like realistically, there are so many things that people use their desktop for that are very like they require modern software solutions, and they require like maybe a lot of computational power. You can't do a lot of things on a 12-year-old ThinkPad, right? And that's that power that people need, that flexibility that people need is just not there in stable desktop distros like Debian. And it's just it's crazy to me that people would recommend it. Like, you should try this just to anybody without knowing like what they want to do with their computer, and just acting like Linux, and just acting like Debian is going to work perfectly for them out of the box. I really think that that's a huge reason why desktop Linux has taken so long to take off. I mean, desktop Linux has only seen mainstream usage in the last year or two, maybe? I mean, I would consider something like the Steam Deck coming out as like the biggest event in desktop Linux history, right? And that's based on, I want to say Arch, but maybe it's not. But it's something a lot more modern than Debian. It gets more frequent releases, and that's because it's really a necessity for like mainstream users.
Is this guy a retard?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.